Hey there. Welcome, welcome. I am so glad to have you here today for this workshop on visibility for your personal brand. Want to just give you a quick introduction to me and a little bit about my story so you can see where I'm coming from and kind of why I'm doing this for you today. I'm Melissa Henry. I am the founder of Melissa Dimple Photography and Personal Brandography. I was in the corporate world for a really long time as a CPA and a professional, project management professional. And I kept switching jobs every, 4 years or so because I thought it was that I didn't like the company I worked for, or it was just the type of accounting, and that maybe if I went somewhere else, I'd like it better. But what I figured out over the course of time was that no, it was that I just really didn't like accounting. So I did start to build a business, a photography business on the side for newborn and maternity clients. And that went on. I had that business for many years on the side, and I kept making these excuses as to why I couldn't leave my corporate job. And one day, the universe decided to step in. So I was a contractor at a federal government agency, and it was a toxic work environment. I had my staff, there was not that many staff. It was like we were understaffed, and we were very new on the project. And so we were working these insane hours and just with bad morale and all of those things. And the manager on the client side came to me one night at around 10:30 at night and was yelling at me and saying all these horrible things, and that what was wrong with me, how come you don't have this on my desk, all those things. And at that moment, I felt so trapped. And I just remember thinking I needed a way out, and I sort of had that lizard brain experience where I was like, I'm either going to run out of here right now, like the fight or flight thing, run out of here right now, or turn around and punch this lady who's yelling at me. And both of those scenarios were not a good idea for me to do. But at that moment, I decided that's it. I can't do this anymore. And just a couple of short months later, I was out of there. Decided to just throw myself full-time into my business. So fast forward 5 years, I haven't looked back, and I also realized during this time, this past 5 years where I have been studying personal branding and helping my clients with creating imagery for their personal brands that helps them become or look the part of their leadership and their authority, I realized during this time I had a why, the reason why I was doing this. I realized that time and that moment really brought into focus that I never want any woman entrepreneur to feel trapped, like to feel like, her business isn't working out and so she has to go back to a corporate environment and sit in a cubicle. I don't want that for her. I want women entrepreneurs to make their business grow faster in a way that's totally in alignment with their big vision, with like the impact that they really want to make. I want women entrepreneurs to feel 100% confident that they've got their strategy locked down and that they know how to put themselves out there and they know how to grow their business with that direction. So while I've been photographing entrepreneurs for at least 5 years now, I realized the need for a coaching program when one of my clients had come to me for photos, but it turned out that she didn't really understand her brand. And so I really needed to kind of figure out, wow, like how do I create images for her when I'm not really sure who it is that she's serving, and I'm not really sure how, and I don't know what it should feel like, and all of these things. And so 2 years after I took those photos, that same client came back to me, and she admitted that she hadn't really been using those images much. She really didn't have a handle on where she was headed in her business, and she hadn't taken the action necessary to make her, to get her on that path to her big vision. So that's when I decided it was time. I had to create this coaching program so that anyone who's coming to me for photos, if they don't have that on lockdown, I can help them with that. And going back to my why, I just know, and I know this because of my own experience as well, having a strategy in place for your personal brand is how you are going to be able to keep that focus and keep those blinders on when life sets in, when when you start getting those emails in your inbox about this tactic and that tactic. You won't be pulled from side to side and be investing your money in all of these things that may or may not work for you, or maybe just at the wrong time for you. So with that, let's dive in here. And before we're talking about visibility, I want to show this graphic to you because I really want you to understand what brand strategy is. Many people will say, oh, my brand is my logo, my graphics, my website, and all of those things, when really, as you can see from this pyramid here, all of those things are a part of your brand identity, the way that your image comes across to your audience. So the other things, your brand strategy, that's your mission, your vision, that big impact you want to make, your ideal client, your values, all of these things and more that make up that foundation that helps you create the strategy you need to make all those other layers of your marketing pyramid work for you. So what types of brands are there? When I say types of brands, I'm just meaning the brands that are within your business, okay? So your personal brand. Your personal brand is your reputation. And you are, as a solopreneur, you are the face of your business. It's kind of like you can't, if you put your business out there and that's the thing that you're putting in front of yourself, it is just way harder to connect. The reason is we're all human and we love to have that human interaction. It makes it easier for you to grow that business if you have yourself out in front of it. And as founders is another thing here. You infuse your personality and your values and things like that into that business brand. And so understanding what those things are for your personal brand is so key. So business brand. We all know business brands. We're very familiar with that. But what I want you to remember here is that you should understand that your personal brand kind of steps out in front of your business brand. It is, by the way, very helpful for you to remind yourself from time to time that your business is a separate entity from you. But the key here is that your personal brand helps you build that business faster. Okay? So you also have, and you should have, product brands or a product brand within this group of brands in your sphere here. So your product brand, and I haven't really talked about this up until now with my audience, but it is important to note because one of the ways that you're going to set yourself up as an authority and show how you are unique and why people should buy from you and grow that business is through unique offerings. You're going to be creating things that they're from you. You're saying things a different way than maybe other people have said, and that's what's going to be attractive to the people that you want to attract. So you're going to want to create names for your offers or your products so that it differentiates them from each other, and it also highlights your unique approach. For example, my two core offerings right now are my personal brandography blueprint, which is my coaching program, and my Brand Bliss photography experience, which is my VIP level brand photography session. So those are things to keep in mind that you want to be thinking through, but we're going to today focus mostly on that personal brand. These are some of the elements that you should know about for your personal brand as you start to look at your brand strategy. Now, your personal brand is made up of 12 major components, all of which really are important for helping you create and execute an effective visibility plan. But right here, I'm going to highlight some of the most common ones that I believe you should know about, because I believe that those are some of the more, the higher elements that really truly factor into growing your influence and by extension your business. So, your vision. Reminding yourself of your vision is helpful because it brings you back in touch with your why. It gives you motivation, and you're going to need that motivation because it's going to be helpful for you to become to use that motivation to become more visible whenever you feel like you'd just rather not put yourself out there. It's important to do that. It keeps you staying consistent with your messages and with the method that you choose to get your visibility. I say do this often. It's you can write your vision out on a sticky note and put that in front of you on your computer. You got to look up every once in a while to see that you're staying on track. Also, your short-term goals. So reminding yourself of what your short-term goals are will help you best figure out which avenue of visibility will be the most effective right now. So, for example, let's say you have a coaching program that's full and you want to make a much bigger impact because you feel like that you can really help a larger audience. So your short-term goal may be that you're creating a course that you want to launch, let's say in the next 3 months. So to reach that wider audience, you're going to be looking at visibility methods that are going to give you the biggest bang for your buck, right? And when I say the biggest bang for your buck, I'm not necessarily talking about money. I'm talking about time. And I'm talking about effectiveness with the audience that you specifically need to reach. All right, and your ideal client. Your ideal client helps you figure out not only where you should be on social media, but also it allows you to think through where else you might find your ideal client, both on and offline. And I want to give you a quick story about this. In one of my free coaching calls, I had someone come on who helps small businesses maximize their profits by using a merchant service that costs less. And she was struggling because she's a mom and she did not want to have to go to each individual mom and pop shop to talk to them directly, and she felt like that was a big waste of time and all the things. And so as we talked through it, I was helping her kind of drill a little deeper into that niche. So I said, how can we focus on one particular type of client? And so we spoke through it, and then we figured out that one of the types of businesses she really likes working with are restaurants. And so I asked her, well, where do the restaurants, where there's the owners of the restaurants, where do they go locally? And she said, oh my gosh, well, there's distribution companies that distribute, supplies and things to the restaurants. And there's sometimes they have events and things like that. And then she said there's also associations and things like that. And so we realized that, oh my gosh, this is where she should be. She loves to speak in front of groups and teach them things. And this was the opportunity not only for her to get in front of her core target audience, this micro niche audience, and help them and have them come to her to purchase her product because it's her, right? But also it gave her the opportunity to collaborate with those associations and with those distribution companies so that they could refer her. So this is big stuff. This is very powerful. So, problems you solve. So problems you solve, that's important here because you want to, it basically helps you inform your content. Like, what are you going to write about? And it's not, again, not just online. I mean, yes, social media for sure. Yes, your newsletters and all of that. But it also can inform your topics for what you're going to speak about. It's going to help you with sales pages and your webinars and anything else really that you're going to do and grow and scale your business is going to be important for you to understand these problems. Knowing those problems at a core level and in various areas like functional, economic, emotional, it will really get you tapped in to what's on the minds of the people you most want to help. Right, your uniqueness. So knowing what makes you unique as compared to others who may or may not, or may do what you do, really, is key. It helps you figure out the visibility strategies that are going to be the most effective. It also gets you dialed into what lights you up the most when you're trying to do your business development and when you choose a marketing strategy. Because here's the thing, if you love a certain strategy over another, you're gonna be consistent in your follow through with that strategy. And that is really what's going to make your efforts effective in growing your business. And last but not least, at least on this list, are your brand archetype and your brand voice. Here's why it's important. And if you don't know what an archetype is, let me back up with that. An archetype is really a category of personality, and it's important because there are overarching archetypes in our culture that are common and consistent, right? And it helps your audience kind of in a subconscious way identify what you're like, right? So if you understand what those archetypes are, it's going to help you set yourself apart because you're going to be using them intentionally. It makes you more recognizable out in that marketplace. It's important, and not only that, the brand voice too, but both of these things are important for speaking, for writing, for podcasting, for any of those methods like that to help you gain that visibility. And of course, no training on visibility would be complete without talking about your brand assets. You need to have an inventory that comprises your brand up to this point. This is important because you want to first see that across your brand assets, you're being consistent with your visuals and message. And then also, you want to know what components of your brand assets you're going to use in your visibility strategy so that you can maximize your results. So for example, if you want to maximize a speaking opportunity as a way of growing your email list, you're going to want to have an appropriate lead magnet, an opt-in page with a place for people to sign up for that lead magnet, and you'd want to have at least a headshot, if not some brand photos, on that opt-in page so that people know it's you that they are buying, or not buying, but they're getting this lead magnet from, okay? And I've said this before, that when you're in your first year of business, things like your logo and your fonts and your colors and your graphics and things like that are great, but they're not necessary for actually getting your brand out there. So before you go and create those assets, you need to develop your brand strategy, either through a program like mine or by hiring a personal brand strategist to help you one-on-one, okay? And remember too that the investment that you make in developing that brand strategy is going to pay for itself over and over and over again, because you are going to be able to put those blinders on and you're not going to be swayed here and there by the promise of a fast buck or the perfect tactic for you. You're going to be able to focus in and build and grow your brand and your business with that brand strategy. And you're going to do that before you begin marketing, okay? So let's go on to the brand building stage. When at this stage of business, you need to be thinking about business building activities as well as growing your personal brand awareness. And that's what these strategies I'm going to outline for you are. First and foremost, remember too that marketing shouldn't really be considered, and I don't know if you've heard of this before, but really you should not consider marketing, like marketing strategies, until you have a proof of concept, you have what's called a minimum viable offer, and you've actually helped transform clients in some way. Marketing efforts are longer term strategies. They require many times do require a monetary investment that can be significant, not always, but many times when we're thinking about those marketing strategies, there is a cost associated with that. So there's going to be other strategies that are going to come up here that are a mix of business building and marketing, and I'm going to point out which strategy is what as we go along. So the first thing here, again, this is not really a strategy, having a headshot. When I say a standard headshot, I make I'm trying to point out that this is basically a head and shoulders picture of you. It's not meant to be personality, like, it's not meant to be brand photos. It's meant to be showing what you look like so people can get a sense of you and know you across channels. So that's why you'll hear that when you get a headshot, you want to use it across all of your social media profiles so people can recognize that that's really you. Okay. Brand photos do become necessary, but it's later on, once you've determined your niche, your micro niche, hopefully, you've got that offer in place, and as I said before, you've got those transformations for some clients that you've worked with, okay? One of the most amazing ways that you can get your personal brand out there is through speaking, and that's speaking virtually and on actual physical stages. So this is a great strategy, and again, this is a business building strategy here. It's a great strategy if you're already skilled at public speaking or you just really enjoy being on stage. And I do want to say to you that you may think you're off the hook if you don't like to speak publicly, but I'm going to encourage you to do this anyway, because if you're the face of your business, you're going to need to embrace actually being in front of people as you develop your personal brand. So, a few things to note about what you should have in place in your brand strategy to make this particular strategy of brand awareness most effective is you really want to have that ideal client dialed in at a deep level so that you're laser focused on where they are and how you can get in front of them. I mentioned this before with that story that I told you. You're going to need to have the problem you solve dialed in. You want that speech to help your audience attain a result and walk away with a transformation of some kind. And so you don't know what those results are or that transformation unless you've dialed in here. An expert bio is also really good to have in place because you're going to need that in order to get the speaking opportunity. It's something that they will put into the materials for the event. And it also helps you establish those proof points. So like, why should people be listening to what you have to say on this topic? And as I've said before too, I mentioned this earlier, that having a way of bringing people into your world after the event is super important because you don't want to just go out there, do the speaking engagement, and then nothing comes from that. You do want to bring people into your world. So that's, I had mentioned before, a lead magnet is a great way of doing that. So networking. You probably are rolling your eyes at this point because you're like, oh my God, really? Like, I want it to be visible and networking, we're going to talk about that. Most people don't see that as part of their visibility plan, but it really truly is one of the best ways to begin getting that brand awareness out there. And it's one of the fastest paths to cash in your business if you are on the early side, because it really does get you face to face with people so they can see who you really are. So one thing I do want to say too on this topic is I would be extremely intentional about what groups you really want to network in. They should be vetted by you. Go to some of these events virtually. It's so easy to do that these days. So drop in on these different networking groups and get a feel for them. You don't want to commit to a group until you know it fits where you're headed. It has either your ideal clients or people that maybe serve the same niche that you do, but maybe in different industries. They could potentially become collaboration partners, things like that. You got to have some kind of resonation, or you got to resonate rather with with the group before you actually commit. What's important here, as far as your ideal client, as far as your personal brand awareness, is that you need to know, again, that ideal client. It's really helpful to have a concise elevator speech, and it's really good to know the problems that you can solve. One tip I have for this strategy is to create a QR code that leads you to a calendar link where people can book a call with you directly. You can then put the code on your lock screen on your phone or on the home screen, and then that way, whenever you're in person with someone, you can just bring that up really quickly and they can get onto a call with you easily. I'm going to show you an example of that in just 1 minute. So direct messaging. What this is kind of like online networking. It's basically reaching out to people through direct messages on social media. This is a business building activity. And there's a method to doing this in a way that's organic and effective, but we won't be able to go into this in great detail. It's a big topic, and it does require details around it. And I do believe that it's kind of both a science and an art. So definitely find, if you want more information on that, reach out to me. I can give you some resources on that. But one thing I will tell you is that you want to treat online networking the same as you would if you were offline. And what that means is that you need to establish rapport right out of the gate. What are the things that you have in common with this person that you're reaching out to? And you don't want to immediately sell to anyone, because I know we don't love that, right? We've all gotten those DMs. I mean, in fact, I'm getting emails from people I've never met in my life asking if I want my website done or I want this or that service. So we don't like it. We're not going to trust that. So now, what's important here in terms of your brand strategy elements are, in addition to what we've already talked about, understanding your brand archetype and your voice is really great, because that helps you to remind yourself to stick with the program, to stick with who you really are. You don't want to come across in these messages as someone you think they want to hear from, if that makes sense. It's more about, let's be real, let's approach the other person like they're a real person. And it's really doubly important because, as you know, I mean, you can smell the phony right away, can't you? So that part is important. And then using social media to engage, okay? You notice that I included the word engage here, and it's meaning engage in other people's content, right? So of course, is it important to post on social media so that you can build your brand? Yes, of course it is. But at this stage of the game, and actually I'll even argue that throughout, like any stage of the game that you're in, it's going to be important to engage with others first. So, creating an elaborate social media content strategy and campaign and throwing it out there without ever engaging in anybody else's content is going to get you nowhere. And by the way, I mean, social media posting, the content marketing strategy, it's a marketing strategy, right? It is an organic traffic strategy, which is awesome, but it's a long-term strategy. And engaging in other people's content can bring you to a connection call much faster. Because if you're able to kind of explain or help someone out with something that they're struggling with, you can then reach out to them and potentially get on a connection call with them. So, what's our last thing on this list? Begin your email list. This is also an area I think that some people are they're frustrated, or maybe they roll their eyes because they're like, oh my God, that's just, I can't even think about it. It's just too complicated. But seriously, having an email list is a foundational asset for your business. Begin, if you haven't already, begin your email list now. And again, if you don't have a clue about how you could get started, reach out to me. I can give you some resources for that as well. So here's the thing. When you're starting out, you don't have to email people every single week at this point. You could even just have a monthly newsletter, which could be about telling people about your brand journey. People are interested in knowing, hey, I'm building this health, and wellness business, and here's how it's going, and here's what I've done recently, and here's who I've helped, and here was my struggles and all of the things. People love that, and it does build your brand. Okay. And you can also use your newsletter to reach out to your potential clients for feedback. Let them know about upcoming events. If you start to develop a product, you can get market research out of your newsletter. So it's very important to be considering this as an asset to your business long term. Okay, let's move on to brand expanding. Oh, before we do that, actually, here is that QR code that I said that, and that's just kind of a picture of the screen on my phone, which shows exactly how I carry that around and say, hey, when I want to get on the call with somebody, it's right there at my fingertips. All right, so expanding your brand. When you move into this season of your business, you're going to likely keep some of the strategies that you've already done when you were building your personal brand, and then you're going to layer on a few more strategies, okay? And what I would say is that you're ready to add some of these methods once you've established a client base and you've got a solid brand strategy foundation under your belt. So this would be a moment in which you want to expand your brand to generate more clients and higher revenues. Incidentally, this is not necessarily a strategy, although it's part of strategies. Having a brand photo session is really, at this point in your business, is a really good idea. The reason is that you're going to want to have a library of images that tell your story, that connect with your audience, and help build that trust. So your photos will actually help you with all of the remaining strategies that I'm about to talk to you about here. So, what's the next thing? Social media posting for growing your brand awareness. All right, so we've talked earlier about social media engagement, right? And yes, I think it's appropriate to begin at that time when you're doing the brand building to be on social media. But at this point in the process, you're going to want to be creating those social media campaigns, and you're going to need to know, it's called content marketing for a reason, because you need to know several things about your brand in order to create that content. And it's literally those things that we talked about before. I've mentioned that previously, but knowing who you're talking to, knowing those problems you solve, having those transformations under your belt, and really also developing the know, like, and trust through really coming across as your authentic self and talking about things that are not directly always related to selling, okay? Next thing is, okay, so we've started an email list as we were doing our brand building. Now you're going to kick it up into high gear. The reason is that social media, you can get cut off at any time. And if you, there's people, there's very big people in there in the industry of marketing who have been disconnected from their social media audience and were not happy because they didn't have enough people on their email list. So we don't want to go down that road, okay? So that being said, you do want to have a commitment to nurturing your list, providing value, being consistent, and maybe emailing them more often than once a month is a good idea. I also believe too that at this point when you want to grow that list, you're going to need to be having a sales funnel of some kind put in place so that you don't have to carry out everything manually. By the way, my personal brandography blueprint program, I do have a bonus training in there on sales funnels, on how to set yours up, and that will get into more detail for you there. All right, collaborating. This is so amazing. I have loved doing this in my business. It's one of my favorite strategies, and it's really got the potential to grow your business at a rate faster than you may have made with other strategies. But it's important to choose your collaboration partners with a few key things in mind. First of all, you want to choose people who have an audience of some kind. I'm not saying you need to go back, you need to find people who have 1 million people in their, on their Instagram, 1 million Instagram fans or whatever. It doesn't have to be huge, but you do want to work with people who are also growing their brand and that have an audience that's large enough and engaged enough. I think really that's the biggest thing, is how engaged is their audience. You also want to make sure that your micro niche, and I use micro niche specifically, you want to make sure your micro niche overlaps enough with the person that you're collaborating with so that you can ensure you're actually serving the right fit clients together. There's nothing worse than creating a collaboration with someone who has a completely different audience than you do. And yes, I know from experience. So also, make sure you actually like the person. I guess this could go without saying, but I think sometimes we get so excited about growing and really making that impact, we forget that this should be fun and that we should really be partnering with people who light us up, right? Also, make sure that your expectations of each other are documented. So I recommend that at the very least you do this in an email exchange so you get the agreement, but you can also create a affiliate partner agreement and sign it together as well. You want to make sure your collab partner doesn't do exactly what you do, unless you want to bring them on as a partner in your business, for example. Or maybe you want to have a relationship where they serve as direct referral partners when you don't, when you have enough business that you can't take anymore, and vice versa, right? But what I would say here is take care with this, because I've had experiences with this, and unless you are both on the same page, like in other words, your visions kind of have a similar direction, and things like that, and unless you have a written agreement, if you bring on a partner into your business, it can become a huge headache or worse. And this has not happened to me personally, but I know many stories of this, and so you just want to be careful about creating that sort of combined entity. Okay? So, blogging. All right. This strategy has obviously been around for a really long time, but it does still hold up. So what you need to consider here is how much do you enjoy long-form writing? Because the point of blogging and SEO, which is search engine optimization, is that you're putting forth your content in such a way that your ideal clients will be searching for it using keywords, right? You'll need to have your website in place, and you'll need to learn more about how SEO works and how you can maximize it. And you also want to consider too that this is, again, a longer term strategy, and you're going to put that in place when what you want is to drive traffic on the internet to you. Okay? And by the way, the SEO strategy also works with your content on your social media, which is super interesting, and I don't think a lot of people see it that way, but truly, when you are posting and doing other things on social media, you can actually drive traffic to you that way through your SEO. All right, consistency is key here too, and it is longer term, as I said. It really is dependent upon the idea that your clients will use a search engine to find your service. So I'm just going to quickly mention this. You might be after a demographic, a generational demographic that may not do that. So you need to be considering those things when you're trying to figure out what's the best way for you to get that brand awareness and that visibility. Let's see. Hosting virtual events is great. I'm going to talk a little bit about that more when I get into the scaling strategy, but there's a definite need here for when you're in an expansion phase for getting online and having some of those events. And that could look like a summit. That could look like basically, collaborating on a Facebook Live or on a LinkedIn Live, that kind of thing. You can also have virtual events where you bring people into your world so that you can teach them something. Maybe it's a webinar of some kind, or like I was doing my free coaching there for a while. That kind of thing would be a great thing to do. And also being a guest on podcasts. So becoming a guest on podcasts is a great strategy. Know that, again, it's a longer term strategy, and you have to have some of those brand assets in place that you would for some of your speaking events, because you want to bring people into your world after they hear you on that podcast. I do have resources for that. If it's an area that you are looking to get help with, definitely reach out and I can find somebody for you that can help you with that. Okay. So the remaining strategies I'm going to talk about are mainly reserved for when you've been using some of the strategies we've already outlined and you're bringing in clients on a regular basis and you're ready to grow beyond the one-to-one or beyond the small group program, that kind of thing. Like you are at this point now where you're ready to scale. And what I mean when I say scale is that you have systems and processes in place that allow you to serve a way larger audience without having to bring on additional service delivery resources, okay? What does that mean? Basically, let's say you're a coach and you want to scale, but you want to scale, let's say, your one-to-one service. Well, you have limited time. You're only going to be able to serve a certain number of people with the time you have. So if you were to try to scale a model like that, you would either need to bring on more coaches to do that work, or you'd have to restructure the way that you're compensated for those services. So meaning you'd have to raise your prices, or you'd have to create something that was a model that had commissions or some such thing. So this is really where we're getting to the level of we want to scale to a one-to-many service that doesn't require you specifically to do it, okay? So what does that look like? Well, first of all, having, and I would be remiss if I didn't bring the videographers into this, but definitely having a professional brand video, that's really awesome. And again, this is not per se a strategy, but it's a business asset or a brand asset that really does set you apart from others, because a lot of people don't actually go out and get a pro brand videos, but man, they really up the ante, they up the notch on how you come across as the authority. Okay, hosting live events or virtual events that are large scale. Okay, this is great if you're in the scaling area. So it could look like online summits with other people who are scaling their business, in-person retreats, large conferences, things like that. And it is an area that obviously comes with a lot of moving parts, but it really can expand your influence in a fairly short period of time. I would say that what's important here is that you're going to need a team in place. This doesn't have to be somebody you hire, but definitely you hire as an employee. You need a team to make things happen and to make sure that all those moving parts are taken care of. You'll also need to bring in speakers who are authorities in their field. And incidentally, the cool thing about this is that when you bring those speakers in, they can potentially become collaboration partners for you. So it's really a great way to have something that sets you up as that authority and helps you get connected with others you can help each other out. Another way is to host your own podcast. So obviously this is self-explanatory, but here's what I'm going to say about it. You need to have an intention behind this strategy. To have a podcast is part brand awareness, part bringing people into your world to nurture them and then potentially offer them support through your services, okay? So it's definitely something that's a big commitment. So you don't go into it lightly. You go into it with the idea that this is long-term, and it is a long-term strategy, okay? And it's a great idea to have support from an expert who knows how to do the podcast, how to do things like podcast editing, to marketing it, and all of the various components of that. And if you're in the scaling phase, you know already it's necessary to delegate as much as you can so that you can stay focused on your vision. So definitely you'll want to consider all of those parts to creating your own podcast. Okay, media placements. All right, so PR for your personal brand. Sounds tempting, right? It sounds like maybe it's an easy way to become an authority in your space quickly and maybe even effortlessly. But I want to tell you that this is a marathon, not a sprint. I have a friend and a client, Ashley Bernardi of Nardi Media, which is a PR firm for authors. And she puts it best when she told me that she said this, have your strategy, your brand strategy, before you even do PR. And then run in the other direction if somebody guarantees a media placement, because that's not possible in the world of earned media. There's a bit of a story behind this, but basically what she's talking about here is you don't want to pay to be placed, like a promise to be placed somewhere. It's really a longer term strategy, and here's how she defines it. She says she says my job is to get people interested in you and curious in you by building your credibility, raising your exposure and your authority and awareness for your brand. PR is not something that's an overnight success. She gave an example here. She said one client of Ashley's just had her first book come out, and she had her all over national television, and now her second book's coming out 3 years later, and she's blowing up in the media. So now she's getting organic media requests. That was a 3-year process, and she put in and continues to put in the work every single day to collaborate with her team, like her marketing team, her social team, and her PR team. And those are the types of folks that if that's what you're really after, is becoming that authority in your space, that's how you're going to become successful with PR. Okay. Writing a book. So it seems like writing a book's the trendy thing to do these days, right? Well, there's reasons behind that. Because having a book definitely gives you authority and credibility with your audience. And you can use your book as a lead magnet. You can use it to get paid speaking opportunities. You can sell it for an additional revenue stream in your business. Man, that's like amazing, right? But like PR, writing a book and creating a launch campaign and publishing it and marketing your book, these are significant commitments of time, and they are a labor of love. So this is a strategy you would choose with open eyes and, again, the right intentions. So I would say too that having the right guidance for each of these phases of the book writing and publishing and launching process, it will be key to helping you stay committed and creating the outcomes that you want while you're continuing to run your core business, so that you're doing that in excellence. I do have resources too, so if that's something that you are interested in, please reach out. I know people in that industry, whether it is helping you to write your book or helping you to get that published. You can definitely reach out for that. Okay. Ads on social media. I left this one for last, and I have a story behind this where early on I hired somebody to do Facebook ads for me, and I felt like it was such a waste of money at the time, and it was a lot of money for me at that level. And what I didn't understand about it was that you have to be willing, again, it's a bit of a longer term process in the sense that you have to be willing to spend the money not only on the ads, but also on someone to help you with them. And there needs to be a test process, a test and tweak, and test and tweak, and changing those ads until you get something that really does work. So obviously here you're paying for traffic, right? And that price for that traffic fluctuates too. So it's not without significant cost. And so you need to be in a place in your business where you've built up enough capital to begin investing in that ad strategy and to begin and to find somebody to help you with that strategy. So that kind of brings us up to the section of this where I'm going to tell you to go now to your workbook. I've created a visibility workbook here. And in that book, you're going to find not only this quiz, but I also have some areas of your personal brand that I mentioned before, and I have some questions in there to kind of help you hone in a little bit more on your brand strategy so that you can begin using this visibility plan to generate more brand awareness. There's a 12-question quiz, and when you get to the end of that, you're going to calculate your score. And then you're going to go to the table that represents where you are in your business, and you're going to find the strategies that are appropriate for you. So one word of caution as you go through this workbook. Do not do what I have done in the past. Don't overload yourself with lots of different strategies. Know that each strategy that you layer on will have its own steps and require a measure of your time and or support from a team. So choose wisely and stick to what you choose for a period of time to evaluate your results. What you want to be thinking about is how do I become a master at my strategy? And you do that through learning what works and what doesn't work, and just understand that it takes time to build your empire. By the way, if you are feeling like you are stuck about getting more visible, maybe because you feel unsure about your brand or uncomfortable about being in the spotlight, I would like to invite you right now to get on a call with me. I can talk with you about what's coming up for you, and we can decide together what may be the right next steps for you with your brand. So go ahead and hover over that QR code. You saw it earlier. Go ahead and grab a time with me. And I'm so looking forward to meeting you. And please do, when you've gone through this workbook and you've gone through the results and you've come up with that brand strategy, reach out to me. Let me know how this helped you. I'm so excited to help you just get more visible for your personal brand, get you the business that you deserve, and make sure that you are going to reach that vision that is so important to you and make that impact. Thanks so much.